From Egypt to Israel, just ahead, we'll tell you why President Trump has been around the world after brokering peace between Israel and Hamas. And our water woes have gone national. Senior reporter Suzanne Stevens has more on why the Wall Street Journal is writing about Corpus Christi. Well, good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Clara Benitez Cortez. President Trump is headed back to the White House after a whirlwind trip to the Middle East, where he accomplished what many felt was an impossible task. 20 living Israeli hostages held by Hamas terrorists for 738 days are back home tonight. Well, they were freed from Hamas captivity after Israel and Hamas agreed to key elements of President Trump's peace agreement. Flanked by leaders from around the world, the president officially signed the deal in Egypt, where negotiators reached the historic agreement late last week.
This is not only the end of a war. This is the end of an age of terror and death and the beginning of the age of faith and hope and of God.
As part of the agreement, Israel released hundreds of Palestinian prisoners and people detained during the war. Hamas is also expected to turn over the bodies of hostages who were killed or died in captivity. Their families are waiting as the search for those bodies are ongoing. Now, District 34 Congressman Vicente Gonzalez is thankful for President Trump's peace deal in the Middle East. In a one-on-one interview with the congressman earlier today, he said both Republicans and Democrats need to work together to end the government shutdown. Here in South Texas, there are several federal workers he represents affected, including Border Patrol agents.
And we need to get back to Washington. The speaker needs to call everyone back to Washington, and we need to sit in front of each other in the chamber, in committee rooms, and negotiate and work this through. If everybody is home and we're not talking to each other, there's not progress. You can't just let a handful of people in Washington work it all out. We all need to be there.
Well, today is day 13 of the government shutdown. And here in the Coastal Bend, Corpus Christi's water future is a major concern. And now the crisis is getting national attention. A Wall Street Journal article published Saturday warns that Corpus Christi could face a water emergency by 2026 if no new source is developed. It also points to the stalled Inner Harbor desalination project, saying the city now has, quote, no clear path forward. End quote. The timing raised questions, especially from Councilman Eric Cantu, who says the city's water problem didn't start with this council.
We're not running out of water because of this council. We've been running out of water for years. And for years, they haven't done anything to get another water source.
Now, Cantu says the article's timing is no coincidence and believes outside pressure from industry is pushing the city to act quickly. Now, you can expect some road closures tonight as crews continue to install signs along the New Harbor Bridge. Starting at 9 tonight, to I-37 southbound will be just one lane from Nueces Bay Boulevard to Port Avenue. The entrance ramp at Nueces Bay and the exit ramp to Port will also be closed. The good news, it's only an overnight closure while all crews install overhead signs, and construction will last until 6 tomorrow morning when the lane and ramps will reopen. Drivers traveling southbound along I-37 overnight should prepare for delays. And while work continues on the New Harbor Bridge, crews are also tearing down the old bridge during a big transition for the city of Corpus Christi. This photo from our Coastal Bend Weather Watchers page really frames it nicely. You can see the piece of the old bridge being taken down with the new bridge in the background. A big thank you to Lisa Mejia Torres for submitting this shot she took over the weekend. And it's a fresh start to the week, and that means we have a fresh forecast for you. Meteorologist Stephanie Lauber is in the Weather Center. Stephanie, tell us, what are we expecting this week?
Well, so far we've been enjoying a lot less humidity, beautiful weather, but those cool mornings, they're kind of going to be a thing of the past. We're getting a little bit warmer, a little more humidity in the mix. But one thing that's constant that really hasn't changed is the threat of coastal flooding along our beach. Has been watching those waters come up to the dunes at times. And so that is a bit problematic right now, giving the view from Port Aransas. Sand Dollar City camera showing waves still got a bit of action to them, watching those white caps out there, but the water level doesn't seem to be too high now because we reached low tide this afternoon. But it's been a warm one here. Temperatures in the middle to upper 80s right now, 90 degrees in Hebbronville. We still have that east wind direction for the most part, and that's what's helping to kind of keep the waters a bit rougher out there. So coastal flood advisory will be in effect until 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, Tuesday being another day where we're kind of watching the water line recede a little bit, but it's still coming up to a point where we're seeing inundation on those roadways along the beaches. Moderate rip current risk too. So this pattern will eventually break up, and you may have heard something about a cold front in the future. I'll break down what's fact and fiction coming up in your forecast ahead.
All right, Steph, thank you. And Beeville neighbors are upset over items being removed from the graves of their loved ones at Our Lady of Victory Cemetery. Items like bricks, rocks, and other decorations were removed and either placed in dumpsters or in discard piles. Many of the families telling Neighborhood News reporter Adam Beam that the removal came with no warning, but the cemetery's administrator tells us that this is nothing new.
I was really upset. I was mad. I was crying, but I had to calm myself down.
We do this once a year. We don't do it to be mean with anybody. We do it because we want it nice. I want it nice for my loved ones, and I know everybody else wants it nice for their loved ones.
The cemetery's administrator said existing rules prohibited such items because they interfere with lawn maintenance. She says notice was given over the radio and on social media. However, Chris 6 found no posts on the church's Facebook. Well, you've heard of a Barbie dream house, but coming up, we'll tell you why a local couple is lining their home with dolls, all for a good cause.
6 News celebrates Hispanic heritage.
As we celebrate customs like food, rhythms, and language this Hispanic Heritage Month, there's one group of Latinos that have felt misunderstood. Afro-Latinos. I'm your Neighborhood News reporter Jada Jenkins in Corpus Christi, sharing the stories of other Afro-Latinos like myself in the Coastal Bend.
Some may say Afro-Latino is a newly recognized term, but the history began with Christopher Columbus's colonization in 1492, with a mix of African slaves, indigenous peoples, and Spaniards in Latin America. Many Latinos of African descent represent this heritage out loud, like salsa superstar Celia Cruz with her hit La Negra Tiene Tumbao. These songs sing praises of African identity and struggle in Latin America. I took the time to find others in the Coastal Bend who also identify as Afro-Latino. That's when I got a call from Wilkin Martinez, who was born and raised in Honduras. He says he never thought he was any different until he moved to Texas.
Like when I started speaking Spanish, they get surprised, like, oh my God, I didn't know you speak Spanish.
Wilkin says people often discredit his identity.
They misunderstand me just because I'm black. They think I'm Black American, and which I'm not.
Including others in the Latino community.
And I started feeling that I was not part of it.
But he wants people to know he's just as Latino as anyone else.
It's not just because I'm black. It means I don't speak Spanish.
I also met Armand Alex, who identifies as Afro-Mexican.
To me, it means being resilient.
Like Wilkin, Armand says he's tired of labels.
I'm not Mexican enough here, or maybe I'm not black enough.
For him, he says being Afro-Latino is about being connected to his ancestors.
When you dive into the history of Latino people, of black descendants, you cannot help but see the struggle of what it has taken for us to be here.
I opened up to him about my heritage. My mother was born and raised in the Dominican Republic, making me the first girl in the family born in the U.S. I grew up learning to keep our culture alive and sometimes the pain of being misunderstood. But for Afro-Latinos like Armand, he's sharing an important message for others like him.
Find a community of Afro-Latinos. We are very much out there. And so whether it's reaching out through folks on social media,
there's always a sense of pride representing where we come from. And for Afro-Latinos in this community, they'll continue sharing their stories and educating others. In Corpus Christi, I'm your Neighborhood News reporter, Jada Jenkins, Chris 6 News.
All right, Jada, thank you. A Flower Bluff couple is turning their home into what looks like a toy store, all for a good cause. John and Cheryl Navarre have started collecting the new type 1 diabetes Barbie, not for themselves, but for children with type 1 diabetes. The dolls feature an insulin pump and a glucose monitor. Originally, Cheryl, a diabetes educator at Driscoll Children's Hospital, wanted to give them to her patients. But now the initiative has grown past that as they've raised funds for roughly 1,000 dolls.
I think everybody can live by the second commandment, is love your neighbor as yourself. And I think we're at a point in our nation where we need to just start dumping love in everywhere we can.
The Navarres are still trying to raise funds to deliver these all across the state. If you'd like to help donate, you can find this story on our website, KrisTV.com. And golfers were out this afternoon at the Corpus Christi Country Club, taking a swing at raising money for the Triumph Over Kid Cancer Foundation. The Legends Junior Tour hosted the event in honor of James A. Reagan, a co-founder of the foundation. He passed away in 2014, but the nonprofit continues to raise funds and awareness surrounding pediatric cancer.
We run a high school program called Do That One Thing, and I always ask the kids, I say, when is Breast Cancer Awareness Month? And they say October. And then you go in and you lead in to ask, when is pediatric? And no one knows. And Triumph Over Kid Cancer is trying to change the statistics because only 4% of federal research funding goes towards our kids.
The tournament ended earlier this afternoon. It was the 10th annual tour in honor of James A. Reagan. And from the golf course to our roadways, now let's take a live look at your live traffic report. Steph, how's it looking out there?
Well, if you're heading out for that first commute home of the week, here's what to expect. It's not looking too bad out there on SPID, off in the distance, the interchange with the crosstown. You know, it may be a holiday for some folks out there, but we are still seeing a lot of busy bees on the road. So let's take you to the maps now and see if there are any slow spots to keep you aware of. We have the usual stop and go on 37 as everyone tries to figure out what lane to be in to get where they need to go. Where the SPID and crosstown interchange, we're looking good so far. No major slowdowns to report. Even Saratoga's looking good at this time. Checking in on our usual culprit. Actually not that bad on Staples. The slowest part is going to be between Holly and Saratoga per usual, but we're looking good there on Weber as well as on Airline. So as you head out, make sure you stay safe and you drive safe. I've got your forecast when we come back. Hey there, it feels a little warmer outside. Not quite the fresh, crisp, cooler temperatures we enjoyed over the weekend. Cool is maybe a stretch. 90 on Sunday was not very kind, but at least it was feeling all right because we had less humidity in the mix and those cooler mornings, especially Saturday and Sunday morning, feeling crisp in those low to middle 60s. Yeah, that was really nice. That humidity is starting to make its way back though, and you've probably noticed that. Taking a check on our temperatures here in white and the apparent temperature or feels like temperature that your body perceives on account of that humidity. We're starting to get away from things here. Rockport 85 feels like 89. Same temperature situation in Port A, and in the Bluff at NAS Corpus Christi 86 feels like 88. So not a huge difference, but probably enough where you've noticed it. For the inland neighborhoods, we're not doing too bad. Still fairly true to temperature, sitting at 88 degrees, feeling like 89 at CCIA. So next check is going to be on our dew point temperatures, which give us an idea of how much water is sitting in the air around us relative to that temperature. And so far we're still doing pretty good. We've only got 170 on the map there for Port Aransas. That tells us we've got that air you can wear, oppressive humidity. But something to notice for the inland neighborhoods, we've only got 150 degree dew point on the map here for Beeville, 56. A lot of those other inland neighborhoods that were right around that 60 degree threshold are starting to see an increase. We're starting to see more of the middle to upper 60s area wide. So that is a small hint that there's a little more water coming back into the air around us. And our wind direction has been subtly becoming a bit more southerly. East-southeast winds. It's still enough to create that onshore flow where coastal flooding is yet again in our forecast, but the winds overall have been fairly polite, around 15 miles per hour. No disrespectful winds in our forecast anytime soon, but if you had plans to be out along the coast, it's a good thing to keep in mind that we are still going to see that threat of coastal flooding, even though the swell periods have gotten a bit farther apart. yeah, we're still seeing that water come up at times, especially around high tide. So it's important to keep in mind if you had any plans along the coast. All of our Gulf-facing beaches are going to be experiencing that coastal flooding, and there's a moderate risk of rip currents there along the beach. So just be careful. Water temperature is still warm, by the way, so not bad for a swim. You just want to be careful out there. All right, we've enjoyed some more tolerable humidity. Heading through the rest of the week, we're still going to enjoy the lack of it. You might notice a little more heading into tomorrow morning, maybe even a few more sprinkles, because we're going to have a little wrinkle of low pressure, a coastal trough sweep by. So neighborhoods like Kingsville, Riviera, down to Alice even may see a quick sprinkle early in the morning. But other than that, we're going to be fairly dry until about the weekend when dew points creep back up. The upcoming weekend is getting a lot of attention because you may have heard about a cold front coming to the coastal bend. Your ears perked up, you get excited. Let's temper those expectations. One, we are quite a ways out from when that forecast will actually come to fruition for us, but let's take a trip upstairs in the atmosphere and see if we can't show you with some color on this map here, but this literal ridge of lines behind me is a ridge of higher pressure. We have high pressure at a lot of levels of the air above us, and so trying to get some rain in the forecast, let alone cooler temperatures, is going to be about a bit of a stretch. So I am thinking that cold front will be here probably Monday of next week. Between now and then, you'll notice a little more humidity, but temperatures aren't going to take a big dive as it seems just yet.
All right, Tiff, thank you. Hundreds of employees fired over the weekend only to be unfired. Find out why the CDC is in limbo after the break.
You're watching KRIS 6, part of the Scripps News Group.
Well, hundreds of employees fired over the weekend only to be unfired. Well, that's what happened at the CDC. Hundreds of them fired, and prevention rescinded over the firings over the weekend. Now, Scripps News Group's Kadia Tunman has more on the recent chaos within the CDC.
Fired and then rehired. That's the story for many CDC employees. The agency terminated some 1,300 workers Friday, but then rehired around 700 of them over the weekend, according to the union that represents federal workers. Initial terminations included CDC employees working on the U.S. measles response and Ebola containment in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as staff at 6 global CDC offices, according to former CDC Chief Medical Officer Dr. Deborah Howry.
I was very thrown off when that was laid off, because that allows CDC to really respond to emergencies around the world.
Howry says that instability at the CDC is hurting morale at the agency.
Morale is at an all-time low and continuing to plummet. And just really seeing how the secretary continues to say things about the CDC that aren't true and aren't supportive of the staff, like don't trust the experts. That does not help morale.
The incident is the latest impacting an agency that's undergone sweeping changes this year, with Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. carrying out major cuts across the CDC.
What I'm trying to do at the agency is return it to gold standard science, to make sure that anything that we tell the public, we tell the public what we know and what we don't know.
But opponents of Kennedy's leadership say shrinking the agency leaves the U.S. less prepared to handle future health crises.
I am concerned about not just the future of CDC, but public health in the United States and the health of Americans if the CDC is not functional.
Kadia Tubman, Scripps News Group, New York.
It's a monumental day for the United States Navy. Coming up, we'll tell you about a big anniversary for our nation and how the USS Lexington is recognizing the occasion.
You're watching KRIS 6, part of the Scripps News Group.
Before we let you go, we want to celebrate a big day in our nation's history. On this day, way back in 1775, the Continental Congress established the Continental Navy. A special ceremony held aboard the Lex this afternoon acknowledged this special birthday. Celebrations like today's were held aboard Navy museum ships all across the country, but this one had an extra special vibe to it.
This community, this is the best community for military support, bar none. Any place that I ever served when I was in the Navy. You know, so you think about that. I mean, and it's across the board for all veterans of all services. But specifically, I mean, it's really kind of a Navy town.
The USS Lexington Museum hosts Navy birthday celebrations every year, but celebrating the big 250, wow, 250 years, it took a little planning. In fact, the Navy began planning for these nationwide celebrations about 6 years ago. Wow, that's a long time. That's a big birthday to celebrate.
It is, and then next is the Marine Corps birthday, November 10th. So a lot of celebrating to do for the brave men and women who keep us safe all day.
Yes, and this is, like you said, a big, not only just a Navy town, but I think just military in general and veterans in general.
So it's great to celebrate them.
Yes.
Hey, speaking of things to celebrate, we've had a really good run this hurricane season, and it's something to be grateful for because there actually have been a lot of named storms out there. Let's track the tropics and show you the latest name that has been stricken from the list. Well, maybe we're not crossing it off just yet because this is Tropical Storm Lorenzo, who is going to do a loop-de-loop out there in the Atlantic. Doesn't seem to be impacting land. I don't think it's going to make it all the way back to the western coast of Africa there because that water is going to be a little colder out there. So, so far so good that we don't have anything else that we're worrying about out there in the Atlantic. All good things. We like it quiet.
Yes, we do. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching KRIS 6 News at 5 o'clock. We'll see you here in 30 minutes.
Bye.